Welcome to the next episode of Hip Hop Reminiscence. I'm Joe Rosen with my co-host Fuzz Jackson. Fuzz, say hello.
Greetings and salutations, good people. I am Fuzz Jackson.
So, Fuzz, first of all, I got to apologize to our fans. You know, sometimes work and life gets in the way a little bit, and this is baseball season for me. I've been traveling a little bit, so we haven't had an episode in a couple weeks. But we're going to try to get them out more regularly now. I also want to make sure, as a proud Syracuse alum, you know, my man Jim Boeheim retired the other day after a really disappointing loss to Wake Forest in the ACC tournament. It was time, but thank you, Jimmy B. I actually had dinner with him and the Syracuse coaches, including Adrian Autry, a few weeks ago, which is really cool. And I'm looking forward to a lot of more success, let's just say that, from Syracuse in the future. I'm all pumped up today, Fuzz. I just did a Peloton ride with my girl, Allie Love. I'm like super excited. I'm ready to go. But if you don't know who Allie Love is, you got to look up Allie Love. She's the best. Today we're going to do, when we did the rap albums of the 80s, we did everything, right? And now that we're going to get into the 90s a little bit, there's just so much that we got to break it up. So we're going to do 90 to 92 here, which is still going to be hard for one episode, but we think we can do it. 91, there's a lot, but I think what we're going to do is start with 90, talk about some albums there. I know there's a few, Fuzz, you want to talk about there, and then get into 91 and 92. Fuzz, when I look at 1990, there's three albums. Well, actually four for me, but I'll put the fourth in a second bucket. There's three albums that really, really stand out, okay, in terms of what I think are the three best of the 90s. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones that are really good too. But Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet, A Tribe Called Quest, People's Instinctive Travels, and The Paths of Rhythm, which is an incredibly underrated album.
Very underrated.
Because Low End Theory and Midnight Marauders are so unbelievable that People's Instinctive Travels gets overlooked a little bit, especially because Phife wasn't on it that much too. And then, of course, Ice Cube, America's Most Wanted, right? So those three, to me, are the top three of the 90s in any order. Of those three, Fuzz, which one's your favorite?
Man, you know, that's awesome because I have People's Instinctive Travels and Paths of the Rhythm as number one.
Yep.
Which came out April 10th. And I also have Ice Cube, America's Most Wanted at number 3.
Yep.
That dropped May 16th.
Okay.
That year. But, Joe, I would have to say, my brother, out of those two, I'm going to have to go with Tribe's first album. That album was so, like you said earlier, that album was so unbelievably underrated. But for me, the production was really, really underrated on the album. And yeah, there was not a lot of Phife, but that album still holds a lot of weight for me to this day because it was just so different. And the subject matter was just unbelievable. So yeah, out of those two, bro, I have to say that one.
You didn't have Fear of a Black Planet in your three, huh? What did you
have?
No, you know, what'd you have?
Let me tell you, my number 2.
I know. Can I guess? What was it?
Go ahead. Go
Can
ahead.
I guess?
Guess. Go ahead,
Lord Finesse. Lord Finesse.
That's on my number 6. But you know, look, I'm gonna give you a hint, Joe, of what number 2 is. Vanglorious. This is protected.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, I got To the East Blackwards at number 2, which dropped April 24th of that year. Yes. I'm just gonna spit the rest right quick. Number 4, I got Brand Nubian, One for All.
Okay.
December 4th of that year. Number 5, LL Cool J, Mama Said Knock You Out. September 14th, that dropped. Number 6, Lord Finesse, Funky Technician, February 6th. Number 7, Eric B. and Rakim, Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em, June 19th, that came out. Now, this is where 8, 9, and 10 are tricky. EPMD, Business as Usual, which dropped at the end of that year, December 18th. NWA 100 Miles and Running, which dropped that summer, August 14th, 4 days before my birthday. And number 10, Boogie Down Productions, Edutainment, which dropped July 17th of that year.
You didn't
So
have
yeah,
Fear of
that's
a
my.
Black Planet on it at all?
No, I didn't. Well, that's actually, you know what? That's my honorable mention. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow. I mean,
yeah.
look, I
Well,
mean,
well,
go ahead. Go ahead.
these are the albums. These are the albums I played the most in my 1984 Renault Alliance. So these are the.
I'm with you.
So,
I have my 1986 Chevy Cavalier that I broke the door the first day I drove it on a telephone pole.
woo!
Oh, and I was driving it. I
Oh,
was like sitting like this because it hit because the thing hit. But Fear of a Black Planet, I mean, it's not Nation of Millions. Nation of Millions, I mean, you know my thoughts on that. I think it might be the best rap album of all time, even though Low End Theory is my favorite. We'll
right,
talk about that. But Fear of a Black Planet,
right.
Fuzz, had Burn Hollywood Burn, Fight the Power, Welcome to the Terror Dome, 911 is a Joke, which isn't my favorite Public Enemy song. But though, I mean, it's not Nation of Millions, but it's really, really good. I have that as my number one. I have People's Instinctive Travels, number two, America's Most Wanted, number three. There's two, my 4 and 5 aren't on your list, Fuzz. But I mean, you know how I feel about Poor Righteous Teachers and Holy Intellect's one of
Yeah,
my favorite
yeah,
albums. And then Paris, The Devil Made Me Do It, which I think is incredibly underrated. The whole album is
yeah.
great. That song is amazing. But
Gorilla Funk.
but exactly. But the rest of the albums I have in different order. The only one that I think you're missing that I have is Digital Underground Sex Packets, but that has like specific meaning for me. And I got a question for you. Am I allowed to put Belle Biv DeVoe Poison on this? Like, it's kind of hip hop, right?
I
Like,
would.
right?
Yeah. I'll let that slide, man. I'll let that slide.
Because it's a great.
Yeah, I'll let it slide, bro.
It's a great, and I didn't love. Look, I'm a huge NWA fan, and I loved 100. I mean, I love obviously Straight Outta Compton was the second best album in the '90s. I think we talked about, but I didn't love 100 Miles and Running. I thought it was okay. It's the first album without Cube, right? And I think I realized how important Cube was to me. But let's go back. Let's go back to the Tribe album. I want to talk to you about that because you have right. Can I Kick It? El Segundo, which was the first Tribe song I ever heard, was El Segundo. That was the first song I ever heard.
Yeah. Oh, for
right?
sure. For sure. Yeah.
Benita Applebaum, Luck of Lucian. You know, Fife was in a couple songs, obviously, most notably, Can I Kick It? But really didn't find his voice till Low End Theory, which is why I think like Low End Theory is almost the perfect album. But you have it number one, which is a little concerning for me because they're my favorite group of all time, and you have them ranked higher than I do, which is awesome. I love that. But is it time and place for you? Was there a specific cut on that? I mean, the album, you're right, it's very underrated.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's a little bit of both. I think for me, that album dropped at a time for me in hip hop where I was getting kind of burnt out on the gangster rap. I was getting kind of burnt out on pop. And Tribe was just like a breath of fresh air. It was just so different. The lyrics were different. These guys were smart. They dressed different. Like when that album came out, I went to the Gap and bought a Paisley button-down shirt.
And you wore it to a high school dance, didn't you?
Bro, I rocked that shirt every Friday, bro. Hey, you know, like I was way into it. It was just so different, man. And I think that's when I knew when that album dropped, Joe. That's when I knew. I just felt it in my soul. Like, you know what? It's okay to be different in hip hop. We don't have to be tough. We don't have to be killers. We don't have to, you know what I mean? We don't have to fit that mold. We can be different. We could be artsy. We could be smart. We could dress different. We could rap about sports. We could rap about whatever. And for me, that's why I think that album holds so much weight for me.
Yeah, that makes sense completely. I'm with you. It's time and place too. Like we always talk about it. I mean, Fuzz, like we're both 49 years old. I can't remember what happened, 2 days ago sometimes. And I remember the first time I heard El Segundo. Like I'll never forget it. When I was in high school, I worked at a shoe store in the Tri-State Mall in Wilmington, Delaware. It was actually Claymont, Delaware. And this guy Rob, who was one of the like head sales associates, who knew I liked hip hop, right? But I mean, I had played like
Mm-hmm.
Public Enemy and stuff like that. Comes in, and this was like before the album dropped. This was '89, I think. So he had some access to it or whatever, and he puts it on the speaker in the store, and he plays it, and I'm like, what is that? That is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. And it's kind of funny, right? Because Elsa, Tribe talks about things. I mean, not the way Public Enemy does or NWA does, but they do talk about important issues, right? I mean, we consider them conscious rappers. We talked about that in the first
Mm-hmm.
episode a little bit. But El Segundo isn't about anything. El Segundo is just a fun song, right? And
Right.
it's great. Like the other day, I was driving home and I played. What did I play for my son? My middle son, who's turned 16 tomorrow, actually likes old school hip hop, and I played Dwick by Gangstar, with Nice and
Right.
Smooth in it.
Oh yeah, for
And
sure.
I said, listen to Greg Nice's verse. And he listened. He's like, Dad, he's not saying a word. And I said, no, that's what Greg Nice was. Greg Nice just rhymed. He's like the opposite of Jay-Z for me, right? My issue with Jay-Z is he doesn't rhyme enough sometimes. Greg Nice made sure to rhyme. He didn't really care what he said. And in El Segundo, that was that type of song. It was just like the beat about these guys driving from New York, from New York to California, and they left their, like, it was a great, great song. And I'll never forget where I was when I heard that.
Yeah. Yeah, I had just got home from school that day off the bus and turned on Yo TV Raps, and boom,
Dr.
yeah,
Dre and Ed Lover.
Ed Lover, yeah,
right?
yeah, for real. Shouts
Yeah.
out to them. And when I saw this, I was like, at first I was like, yo, what the hell is this? Like, what is going on? And then that beat was just so different, man. And you remember back in the day when you could go to the mall and buy like the singles?
Oh yeah,
absolutely. I bought that single, yeah, and and on the back it was the instrumental, and I was like, yo, this beat is crazy. And after that, man, I was sold. But not only that, when you get that album, man, you got that song, you got Bonita Applebum, you got Can I Kick It? But also you got The Description of a Fool and joints like that are like really on some conscious shit. So that album was really different, bro. So yeah, I definitely had to throw that number one.
Talk about, the one, so Tribe we're going to talk about a few times, obviously, because Low End Theory comes out in 91, right? I think Midnight Marauders we'll talk about in another episode, because I believe that was 93 or 94.
Yeah.
93, I think. But we're going to have 3 Cube albums that we talk about here, right? America's Most Wanted, Death Certificate, and Predator. America's Most Wanted comes out in 1990. You have the title track. You have You Can't Fade Me, Once Upon a Time in the Projects, Tales from the Dark Side. This was, I believe, and Fuzz, correct me if I'm wrong, was his first solo album. And this was when he got the Bomb Squad involved, right? Because it definitely had that East Coast feel. Of the 3 Cube albums, and we're going to talk about them all, I think you said, and I know Jim said on our What If episode, but I think you said that America's Most Wanted was your favorite. And correct me if I'm wrong on that as well. What was different about that for you?
America's Most Wanted, Bomb Squad.
Yeah.
Bomb Squad. That sound, because when we heard Burn Hollywood Burn, right? And we heard Cube on that record, the first thing that pops in your mind is like, damn, what if Cube did like a whole album? You know what I'm saying? With this type of flavor and this type of the sound and production, and then boom, it happens. And it's kind of a FU because people thought that there's no way this guy from the West Coast could interact with these guys from the East Coast in this work. And he proved everybody wrong. And that album is it's a conscious record, but it's so street. It's so street that at first you don't think it is what it is, but that record is probably one of the most important records in hip hop, like hands down.
I don't remember a lot of cover art. Like that's kind of not where my mind goes for, because we're talking about, I mean, America's Most Wanted, I had the CD. I think we were in CDs by then, right? We were past cassette tapes, I think, like for the most part. Maybe it was cassette tapes, but there's like 3, Low End Theory, the art stands out, right? And Nation of Millions, I remember what that looks like. And there's other albums, Straight Outta Compton. You remember how that looked. But I remember America's Most Wanted because it was like that grainy picture of Cube, right? Like on the front, it looked like it was taken, drawn by some artist like years ago, and he just looked angry. I mean, Cube looked angry alive, but it was, you know what I mean? Like I remember that picture. I think Predator to me was my favorite, and we'll talk about that when we get to 92. But America's Most Wanted was his first. I mean, Cube had 3 years in a row, and this was back when folks dropped albums every year, right? Like
Right.
they don't do that all the time now. I mean, what was, when Kendrick dropped Mr. Morale this year, I think it was what, 5 years after his last one? I mean, it just doesn't happen. Like the folks don't drop albums all the time anymore. This is back when people dropped it every year.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I want to talk before we move on to 91. I want to talk about Lord Finesse because I didn't listen. Well, actually, one thing I do want to point out that I didn't realize, a couple things when we were looking into these albums. Mama Said Knock You Out, which we both have. I have that number 6. I didn't realize that was produced by LL himself and Marley Marl. I never say his name right. It's hard for me to say Marley Marl. But I didn't realize that was I didn't realize that was produced by them. And then Lord Finesse, that album, Funky Technician in 1990, I remember when he was in the DITC crew, right? The Digging in the Crates crew with Big L. And I didn't even realize Big L was in that until I like looked back at it. And I'm like, yeah, it was Big L. It was Lord Finesse. I think it was Showbiz and AG, right? Like it was a bunch of them, right?
Fat Joe,
right?
Joe, Donnie
yeah.
D.
Yeah.
But
I went back and listened because you've been talking about Lord Finesse, and I didn't really listen to him a lot in the 90s. So tell me what that album meant to you, because I know you're a big fan of his. I have that as my number 8. You had that 6.
Yeah. That album was crazy because people really don't understand the type of lyricism Lord Finesse brought to the game. Like Lord Finesse's pen to this day, like Lord Finesse's pen is probably one of the most slept on pens ever. And for anybody out there that really wants to get into Lord Finesse, check out his album he did. I think it was like maybe 94, 95. It was called The Awakening. Check that album out.
Okay.
That's another impressive album. But Lord Finesse for me has always come through lyrically, man. And like, I think people need to give him his flowers, like for real, because he's always been dope. And his production's nice too.
Yeah, I listened to that whole album front to back the other day, and I was really impressed. I had heard it before, of course, but it wasn't like, in my rotation, like People's Instinctive Travels and Fear of a Black Planet. What, you know what I mean? Back in those days. I mean, there's guys you miss, before this show, when we were doing the research, I think both of us, when we were doing the research for this show, we came across a bunch of Compton's Most Wanted albums from 90, 91, and 92. And I didn't listen to them. And I don't think, you weren't a big, you didn't listen to it a lot either. And it's probably something we're going to have to go back and listen to.
Yeah.
Because they're all over the place. You know what I mean? They're listed all over the place. So, all right, Fuzz, let's move to 91, because 91 is insane, right? Like 90 is very good. 90 kind of reminds me of 80s stuff a little bit. With Tribe's first album, because 89 was, De La's first album. 91, to me, there's 3 albums that are the top 3, but man, there's a lot. Like, there's a lot. And Low End Theory is number 1, right? Like, Low End Theory.
Yeah, I got that as my number 1.
Yeah, it's my favorite album of all time. I mean, I still think Nation of Millions is like the perfect album, but Low End Theory is my favorite album of all time. I have De La Soul is Dead as my number 2, which is my favorite De La Soul album of all time. And I got one up here as number 3, which I'm guessing you're not going to have as high, but I listened to it the other day, and it is hit after hit after jam, and it's Wolf in Sheep's Clothing by Black Sheep. And all of those, do you have it there? Like,
I got it on my list. My top 3. Okay, yeah. These top 3 albums that I played a lot in my 1984 Renault Alliance. Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory, Public Enemy,
Apocalypse,
Enemy Strikes Black, October 1st drop, Scarface, Mr. Scarface is back October
Great
8th
album.
of that year. Yes. Great album. I do have Black Sheep on the list. De La, of course. Cypress Hill,
Yep.
first
Great
album.
album. Great
Organ,
album.
yeah. Delta Funky Homo Sapien. I wish my brother George was here.
Yeah.
Came out that
Underrated
fall.
album.
Yes. And Joe, you're gonna love this one. And I wish Jim was here. I wish my brother Jim was here. I think Jim would agree. Main Source. Breaking
Absolutely.
Atoms.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I didn't even remember how good that album was. And then I'm like, I forgot about Friendly Game of Baseball. Like, I listen to that all the time, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
A couple more that I want to throw in there because I have all those. Naughty by Nature's first album, which is fantastic, right? Ice Cube
Right.
Death Certificate, which had Steady Mobbin'
Got
and my favorite Cube song of all time, No Vaseline.
Yeah.
Ghetto Boys, We Can't Be Stopped, which honestly I went back and listened to, and my mind's playing tricks on me is such a phenomenal song. That whole album is okay. The Scarface album is better, but that album, it didn't. Let's just say this: the Ghetto Boys, We Can't Be Stopped, I listened to all the time when I was younger. It doesn't hold up as well now, but that's okay. And then Ice-T Original Gangster was 91. Tupac's debut, Tupacalypse Now, was 91. Gangstar, Step in the Arena. Leaders of the New School, A Future Without a Path, was 91. And then NWA, I'm not even gonna I know what it's supposed to, but it was like FO4 Zaggin', right? Like, right, it was right backwards, right?
Yeah.
And I want to tell a story about that before we get into some of these things. So the only reason that's not a great album, like the NWA, it's not a great album. But senior week, that was senior week when I graduated high school in 1991, and we were down at Bethany Beach, me and some buddies from high school, and that's all that came out like a month before we went to senior week when we graduated high school. And I remember Automobile and like some of those songs. That's all we listened to. We didn't listen to that and like Chubb Rock. I think we listened to like Treat 'Em Right, like that album. But that NWA album was legit. Let's talk about Main Source, because I feel like on Facebook a few months ago, I asked and we'll have an episode on this too. I asked what are the best one-hit wonders of all time, one-hit rap wonders of all time. And when we get there, I still think the best one is Rebirth of Slick by Diggable Planets, because they had nothing other. The album was all right, but they had nothing other than that, right? Like there was nothing even played on hip hop radio, really nothing, right? But people were calling Main Source Looking at the Front Door, and I'm like, no, that whole album. I mean, you had Friendly Game of Baseball, you had a bunch of hits on that album. Yeah. Why is that so underrated?
You know, I think that I think Main Source, the group, was underrated. I think they had some personnel changes too that kind of threw everybody off. But when you think about Main Source, man, you mainly think about Large Professor.
You do.
And all the stuff that, all his contributions, man, throughout the game and all the beats he's made for people kind of overshadows the fact that he had Main Source, And so I think, and I don't think it's purposely, but I just think him and his production is just so massive and so big that people often forget about Main Source. You know what I mean?
I think it is too. And 91 too was such an unbelievable year. You know what I mean? Like we graduated high school in 91, right? Like we went to that was a big year for us too. But is there a bigger year in the history of hip hop for one? I don't want to call them an entourage because that's not what they were, but what do you call like subgenre of hip hop, like Native Tongues, right? I mean, you have Low End Theory, you have De La Soul is Dead, you have Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, you have Leaders of the New School. Jungle Brothers probably came out with an album that year, but I don't have it on the list. Maybe they didn't. But
you can't forget Moni Love, Latifah.
Right. No doubt. But like I have all three Native Tongue albums, Low End Theory, De La Soul is Dead, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. Those are my top three. Why, like, does that get back to your thing about people were listening to Public Enemy, people were listening to NWA, and then Tribe, De La came around and they had this totally new style. And that's what people wanted to listen to in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. That think about this. Think about this. Goes back to people we were putting the um LA hats away. We were hanging up the star jackets. We were starting to wear the Africa medallions. We were wearing paisley shirts. We were shopping at the Gap. We were wearing backpacks. We were so that whole vibe changed. We were eating healthier. We were twisting our hair. We were doing a lot of different things because of Native Tongue Tribe. And I think, man, to me, that was the biggest impression in hip hop when that click hit, that it was game over, man. And they were just putting out so much good music so fast. It was hard to keep up. You know what I mean? And just all those
Absolutely.
names and all those names you just said, Joe, are heavy hitters. You had a whole
Huge.
clique of heavy hitters. So yeah.
We talked about it on the What If episode when Jim was on too, about Black Sheep, because man, like I listened to that album this week, start to finish, beginning to end. And that album just is spectacular. Like it's so well done. It's so good. Every song you have Choice Is Yours, you have Flavor of the Month, you have Past the Mutt 40, you have But in the Meantime, you have Similac Child. Like even some of the songs that weren't hits and played on the radio were amazing too. Drez was such a skilled rapper. He had that same type of voice that Q-Tip had, right? Like that smooth, unique voice that, when I think of unique voices that I like, I'm not talking about Lil Wayne Jr., but when I talk about smooth, smooth, unique voices that I really like, kind of the three guys I think about are Q-Tip, Drez, and Snoop, right? And Snoop is everywhere now. Like he's on like every TV show, he's on every commercial, like he's everywhere. He's like Peyton, he's like the Peyton Manning of hip hop. But 91 was insane too. When you talk about Apocalypse 91, and then we'll move to 92, but I'm curious your thoughts, because you had Apocalypse 91 ranked higher in 91 than you had Fear of a Black Planet ranked in 1990. And if you look at 91,
right.
if you look at Apocalypse, I mean, you have Can't Trust It, By the Time I Get to Arizona, Night Train, Shut 'Em Down, which were all hits. The rest of the album, I think, was good, but those four are hits, right? I mean, By the Time I Get to Arizona was such a big song. I remember when it came out, that was when, they were trying to get Martin Luther King Day, which wasn't a national holiday back then. I remember that. I remember the video. I remember everything about that. Why do you like Apocalypse 91 better than Fear of a Black Planet?
Production.
Okay.
The beat, for some reason, man, the beats for me on that particular album just hit a lot harder. I mean, even though, Fear of a Black Planet had heaters, like those three Public Enemy albums, all production was just all of the production was so heavily skilled, man. And along with Chuck D's voice, it just fit. But for some reason, Apocalypse 91 just hit so much harder for me. I don't know why, but yeah, just the production level on that album is just amazing.
You're talking about, right, when we're talking about Ice Cube, Public Enemy, I mean, think about this, right? Like Ice Cube, Public Enemy, Tribe, even De La a little bit. De La was more too, but I know you're a big fan of Stakes is High. Between 90 and 93, you had People's Instinctive Travels, Low End Theory, and Midnight Marauders for Tribe. You have three different Cube albums. You have, Nation of Millions, which came out in the late 80s, and then Fear of a Black Planet in 90 and Apocalypse 91. And I mean, is there a better time period in hip hop than 89 to 91?
No.
There can't be, right? Like even if we want to expand it a few years, like 88 to 92, something like 93, because 93 is a big year too when we get there.
Yeah. But everything, the thing about that, Joe, everything was so innovative. Everything was so new. Everything, the great thing about and people, call us old heads. And I know, like, with me being an older rapper and shit, like, I get called disgruntled and angry. But
You're
there's
not
I
angry,
think
man. You're happy.
right. I'm ecstatic. Like, I'm just happy. But I think the thing about that, bro, is that we saw the beginnings of a lot of stuff. So we know what it's like to be there when the new shit popped off, when we first saw real originality with rappers and producers and DJs. So for us, we're at the age where we saw a lot of what we're talking about in its early beginnings, and we also saw a lot of the stuff that we talked about fall the fuck off.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
we're at a great age, and a lot of the new stuff that we're seeing now, we're here for that as well. So I think we have a great advantage of what we're talking about and our knowledge and putting everything together. So I know it's not me being angry about a lot of stuff. It's just me being factual and being like, hey, we were there when we saw this, when it's happened. And this is innovation. We saw the first time like guys had real bars, and the first time that we made that bitter beer face when we heard something that was dope, like, so we know what it's like to get that feeling. And I think like now that feeling is leaving us. Like now,
Right.
some of the newer stuff that we're hearing. So it's not that us older guys are mad or frustrated. It's just that we miss that feeling that we used to feel, you know?
Yeah. There's good stuff that comes out now. We talk about it, right? I'm a big Kendrick fan. I know you're a big J. Cole fan. I like Logic. I
Right.
listen to Logic's new album. It's okay. I need to listen to it more. But I think it's everything that came out from in 89, 90, 91. I mean, for crying out loud, like we both have like Cypress Hill 7, 8 on this list in a single year.
Yeah.
And that album was ridiculous and unique and like nothing we had ever heard before. And I haven't even talked
Right.
about like Nice and Smooth, Ain't a Damn Thing Changed came out in 1991. Heavy D, Peaceful Journey, which was maybe his best album, maybe not, but a very good album. Like we don't even talk about Heavy D on this show that much. Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh
Right.
Prince, Home Base with Summertime, which every person in the world knows Summertime, right? Like every single human being knows Summertime. And then DJ Quick is the Name, which is incredibly underrated album. Was 91 as well. Let's get into 92 a little bit. And then, because I think like the 3 years that we're doing Fuzz, 90 was very good. 92 was very good. 91 was insane, right? Just so much in 91. But in 92, again, I'm going to start with 3. I mean, Dre the Chronic, right? I mean,
right.
What else? It's almost like what else is there? Not, Ice Cube, The Predator, which is my favorite Cube song. I think just Time and Cube album, excuse me, my favorite, Time and Place. And then Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Mecca and the Soul Brother, which was different and unique and kind of on that Tribe Called Quest jazzy tip, but like great lyrics, great production, great all of that. We'll talk about some other albums too. But in terms of top 3, what do you got?
Okay. Now I have most of what you just said.
I know you have The Chronic, right?
Yeah, Chronic, Pete Rock, CL Smooth.
But
we're gonna talk about Joe. We're gonna go back, Joe, we're gonna go back to a special day, Joe, in hip hop. I love like this right here, though, is my favorite episode, Joe, because we get to talk about a special day in hip hop, Joe.
Okay.
And JR, I know you're listening as well. We're gonna talk about September 22nd. Was a wonderful day in hip hop. You know why? Because 3 of my favorite albums of that year dropped. We have Redman, What the Album.
Great album.
We have Diamond D, Stunts, Blunts in Hip Hop.
I knew you were bringing that up. I knew you were bringing that one up. I knew it.
Joe. And you know what else we have? Showbiz and AG Runaway Slave.
Yep. Another D. I think Fuzz just left. He's just done.
Dude, that day is the day in hip hop. Those 3 albums are so important to me, man, because I remember getting in so much trouble at my with my mom for playing Runaway Slave Showbiz and AG album, that I would play that shit in the house. When we got in the car, I play it in the car. She was like, if you don't get this shit out of my tape deck. That record is so amazing. And because that was my introduction to the DITC crew, Lord
Yeah.
Finesse, Diamond D, Fat Joe, Big L, Showbiz, AG, OC. Um, just so amazing, man. And yeah. And then Diamond D was like, okay, word, I could do something with these guys. But hey, let me show you what I could do by myself. Oh, Pete Rock and CO Smooth. Oh, the producer raps. Oh, I'm gonna do this solo.
Right.
Stunts, blunts, and hip hop. What can I say? Um, Absolutely greatness. And then, back to number one, Redman, like the album, which is by far lyrically probably top 10 lyrical album ever. Eric Sermon on production, so it's a rap. Uh, yeah, so that September 22nd, people, that should be like a day, a special day when we all have a day off from work and we listen to those 3 albums all day long.
My Fuzz, my birthday's September 23rd, so I'll take it. We'll just add it,
Oh,
right?
okay. All right, boom.
So
That's it.
I remember Time for Some Action, which sampled Cypress Hill, by the way, who we just talked about.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
the most sampled line in hip hop history, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in a lot of songs, but that album was great. And we haven't even talked about yet, Far Side Bizarre Ride. Like, come on.
It's on the list.
It's on the list. I have All Yours on the list. Eric B. and Rakim came out with Don't Sweat the Technique, which had Know the Ledge in the title track. And I'm going to give you 5 here, which again,
All right.
I know sometimes I lose a little credibility, and that's okay. But you like what you like, and it is what it is, right? So
There you go.
Arrested Development, 3 years, 5 months, and 2 days in the life was an absolute banger. It had Mr. Wendell, Tennessee, People Every Day, Fishing for Religion. They didn't do anything else after that album. I mean, they had other albums, but nothing successful. You had Daz Effects, which was Cube's group, right? Where they started to flip the tongue. I mean, Poor Righteous Teachers did that too. The flipping the tongue was big in 1992 because not only did you have Daz Effects with Dead Serious, you had the Fushnikins with Don't Take It Personal, with
Both
La
on my
Schmooth,
list.
right?
Both on my
La
list.
Schmooth and True Fushnik. Then I'm going to throw 2 out. I'm a third base guy. I'm a third base guy. And MC Search came out with a solo album. I don't know why MC Search doesn't get more cred. I think MC Search was unbelievable. Prime Minister P. Nice was great too. But MC
Right.
Search had Return of the Product, which has Back to the Grill on that album. It wasn't the greatest album of all time, but Back to the Grill I listened to all the time. And that song had Nas, which was one of Nas's first songs ever, right? I mean, on Back to the Grill.
Right.
And then an underrated album, and again, I'm going to lose credibility on this one, but Criss Cross Totally Crossed Out came out that year too. And that had Jump, Warm It Up, and I Missed the Bus. And I made my son listen to I Missed the Bus the other day, and he's like, this is kind of cool. Like, that had a good beat. Again, I know Criss Cross was like, I'm not talking about
That's
Vanilla
funny.
Ice
I did
here.
like that song.
Right? I Missed the Bus. We're not talking about Vanilla Ice here. We're not talking about House of Pain. The House of Pain album wasn't good. Jump Around's a great song, but that album wasn't great. But I mean, all those stuff is good. And I'm with you. Like, I knew you were going to throw out Diamond D. I knew you were going to throw out Showbiz and AG. I love the Showbiz and AG album. I didn't listen to Diamond D as much as you did. But that Far Side album, man, when that came out, I'm like, that was also in they were kind of like storytellers like Slick Rick. And you know what I mean? Like Slick Rick and, Dana Dane and that out, but it had great beats like like when you heard Passing Me By the first time.
Yeah.
It was different. It was unique. It was like Tribe, but a different type of vibe. It wasn't jazzy. It was more funky. But that's a great year.
Yeah. And I got a couple that we didn't talk about. Shi Ali, speaking of Native Tongue Tribe.
Absolutely. His
fabulous.
Past the 40 was spectacular, right?
Oh my God, yeah. And then Ultramagnetic MCs, Funk Your Head Up.
Absolutely. Yep.
Grand Poobah, Real to Real.
Yep.
First solo album. Yeah. And last but not least, November 24th, Kool G Rap and DJ Polo, Live and Let Die.
Great album. I am not an enormous Kool G Rap guy. So,
Yeah.
a lot of folks, like when we talked about the top 50 rappers, he belongs there. His lyrics are great. He's got he's got a unique voice,
delivery.
right? Delivery is great, flow is great, everything. I wasn't a huge Kool G Rap guy, except for The Symphony, which is one of my probably top 10 favorite hip hop songs of all time, right? Because he had a verse on that. He had a verse on that. I mean, that's Craig G. I mean, that's everybody, right? I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Look through your list. I want you to name your 5 favorite songs, not albums, 5 favorite songs from 1990 to 92.
All right, cool. Okay, Tribe Called Quest, Description of a Fool.
Okay.
We're gonna go with Eric B. and Rakim, let the rhythm hit him. We're gonna go with LL Cool J, Mama Said Knock You Out. We're gonna go with Cypress Hill, How Could I Just Delete a Man. We're gonna go with
I love it.
We're gonna go with Time for Some Action, Redman. And is that 4?
That's 4. Give me one more.
We're gonna go with True Fushnik.
All right. I love that song. It's a great song. I'm gonna go with Nothing But a G Thing on The Chronic. They reminisce over you. That's definitely one of my top 5.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. I have to put a Cube song in there, so I'm gonna go No Vaseline. And then I'm gonna go Can I Kick It? I want to put like 5 Tribe songs in there, but I'm just gonna put Can I Kick It in there. And then my favorite song of all time, Fuzz, Rock This Funky Joint. It's my favorite song of all time.
Yeah.
Like in any genre, in anything.
You're rolling with
if I was stranded on an island, they said you can only listen to one song the rest of your life, it would be Rock This Funky Joint. I think it is the perfect hip hop song. I think the lyrics, the flow, the scratching. I was a big scratching guy. I thought scratching was like the coolest thing in the world. Like back when DJs like did stuff. Like it's so crazy to me how there's like a whole genre of music now for DJs. And I'm not, look, I know they're very, very good at what they do. Like they're incredible, right? They go in the studio and they put the beats together and stuff like that. But, I saw like an EDM artist on stage a few years ago and they were great. Like everybody, the crowd was killing it and everything like that. But they're on stage, like they just press a button, right? And they're shooting t-shirt guns. All right. Well, we'd like to thank you all for joining us today on our episode, about the early 90s, 1990 to 1992. We're having a few technical difficulties on our end, so we're not going to be able to do 4 words today, but we'll definitely be back with that next time. We can't miss out on Fuzz rapping. I mean, that's the best part of the show. So, hey, Fuzz, I'm going to throw it to you, but we'd like to thank everybody. We know that the website is hiphoprem.com. The Twitter handle is hiphopremin, REMIN. That's been, scrolling along the bottom of the screen, and we'll be back here soon. And Fuzz, tell them what's up.
Yo, thank you guys once again for checking us out. We greatly appreciate it. It's Joe. I'm Fuzz Jax. You can catch me on Instagram, your mom's favorite rapper, one word. You can also check out some great music done by your boy. Go to fuzzjax.bandcamp.com. You can go to Fuzz Jackson on Facebook and North Jax on Twitter. That's NORTHJAXX.
Thanks, everyone.
See y'all.